All right, well, I have 6. I'll give folks 2 to 3 more minutes to join, and then we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. Again, we'll just hold out another minute or two, see if we get anyone else to join, and we'll start. We'll say 6:03. We'll get started. All right, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third and final meeting for the Community Utilities Working Group. My name is Chris Rabasco. I'm Planning Associate with Michael Baker International. If you've been along with us before, you know by now that I've been working with my colleague Hannah Clark, along with some township staff to help facilitate and manage Phase 4 of the township's 2021 Comprehensive Plan update. We hope that you've been following along in your workbooks and attending all of our meetings thus far. This will be our last meeting in our condensed community utilities group before we all reconvene with all the topic groups August 19th at the next Planning Commission. Before we jump into some of our topics for today, I'd like to once again go around and do quick introductions so everyone is familiar with each other. Greg, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Greg Adams. I'm the municipal planner for South Whitehall Township, and I'm here for my historical expertise, amongst other things.
Happy to have you, as always, Greg. Robert?
Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Emanuel. I am a planning graduate student at Temple University and an intern for South Whitehall Township.
Herb?
Good evening, Herb Bender, Public Works Manager for South Whitehall Township.
Mike?
Mike Elias, Utilities and MS4 Coordinator for South Whitehall Township.
Thanks. Al Tope.
Al Tope, a member of the South Whitehall Township Planning Commission.
Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Kelly. I am a South Whitehall Township Commissioner, and I'm also a member of the South Whitehall Township Planning Commission.
Bill. Bill McNair. You're muted.
I'm muted.
Good.
Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yep.
I'll repeat. Bill McNair, South Whitehall Township Planning Commission.
Great. Richard Bronstein.
Richard Bronstein, lifelong South Whitehall Township resident and landowner.
Great. And Scott Savette.
Hello, resident of South Whitehall Township since 2008. My wife and I reside in the Pleasant Hill section of the township.
Great. So thanks as always for everyone and everyone's attendance today. We're going to get into some discussion based around recommendations that are going to be presented as suggestions to the Planning Commission at their next meeting. Before we do that, we're going to once again review some of our suggestions that came out of meeting 2, and hopefully everyone is familiar with menti.com at this point. We've been using it a lot, and we're going to use it again today. So if everyone could open up a separate browser or use their phone to go to menti.com and enter code 77215825. We'll put those details in the chat as well. And what you'll see when you get to this screen, menti.com, is a place to enter the code. So it'll be 77215825. You just hit submit, and you'll have options for ranking all of our recommendations that we discussed 2 weeks ago at meeting number 2. So I'll blow this up so everyone can see it a bit bigger. I'll give everyone a minute or two to get themselves over there. And just to review some of the recommendations that were pulled at the end of our discussion last week, we have evaluate growth areas in order to update the land use plan, consider green infrastructure efforts, explore benefits of a capital improvements plan, create incentives for developers to extend utility systems, ensure development follows utility capacity, inventory where high-speed internet and 5G is available, and explore opportunities to increase access, update and develop Act 537 and Act 167 plans, explore alternative energy potentials in the township, and finally, evaluate areas with aging septic systems and develop management or mitigation efforts. So again, those were from last meeting, and the purpose of this ranking right now is in about 5 minutes, we're going to go to the recommendation template in the workbook. And based on this recommendation, whichever has the highest priority, that's what we're going to spend time building out. So if something on this list doesn't feel as important 2 weeks out from our previous discussion, then we're not going to spend as much time talking about key goals for each recommendation, potential funding sources. So if there's something here that you'd really like to dig in a couple minutes, make sure you put it towards the top, and we'll be sure to spend some time on it. So I see 2 of you have already put in your thoughts, so I'll give everyone another minute or 2, and we'll jump into some of the items in the workbook. Everyone getting there okay? Anyone having problems?
I am, but it hasn't worked for me in other meetings either.
Okay. There is the link in the chat. I'm sure you've tried that, but
Let's see.
if you aren't able to figure it out and you would like to maybe list your top 3 or so in the chat, feel free to do that as well, just so we can capture your thoughts and incorporate that into the prioritization.
Okay.
And again, whichever recommendations the group feels to be most important, that's what we're about to spend some time on here in a couple minutes. So.
I did find it this time, so I'm
Nice. Okay, we'll give you a couple seconds to go through the rankings. I know it's a lot. So far with 6 total votes in, we have evaluate areas with aging septic systems and develop management mitigation efforts, update and develop 537 and 167 plans, explore benefits of a capital improvements plan, evaluate growth areas in order to update the land use plan, ensuring development follows utility capacity. Then we have our goal for high-speed internet and 5G accessibility, development incentives to expand systems, and then towards the bottom, alternative energy potential and green infrastructure. So it looks like maybe we won't get to those today, but who knows? We'll see how quickly we get through the recommendation template. So with that, I'm going to quickly head back over to the workbook here and review some of our key goals and outcomes for meeting 3. Like I said, today, meeting number 3 will build out recommendations that we identified in meeting 2. We'll prioritize our recommendations, which we just completed, and we'll go through the recommendation template, which I'm about to review in a couple seconds. Our outcome today is to identify key goals, key actions, leaders, partners, potential funding sources, implementation timelines for all our identified recommendations to help us form the most efficient and effective goals as possible to put in the plan update. These recommendations will be presented to the South Whitehall Township Planning Commission at the concluding working group meeting when we all reconvene. That'll be August 19th. We'll discuss that process a little bit more later, but they will directly go into informing the comprehensive plan update. So what we'll be doing today is using this recommendation template that you can find in the workbook. For each recommendation that everyone just identified as being important, we'll go through and discuss any key goals, key actions, spend time on talking about who could lead some of the actions or efforts, who would be partners, where we could look for funding sources, whether or not you see each recommendation as an immediate need or longer term for the township. Maybe not a priority now, but it could be more important once we take care of some other things, and how we would measure the success of each recommendation. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to utilize Jamboard again. So just like everyone should be somewhat familiar with Mentimeter at this point, we will be using Jamboard, which we've used a bunch of times already. I'm going to quick copy the link and drop it into the chat for everybody. So there it is. I just sent it. And as a review, really what we're going to be asking you to do is use the sticky note function on the left. And as we run through each recommendation, just click on the sticky note, type in your comment, and we'll be sure to put it in. If you'd rather put your comments in the chat, feel free to do that as well. Or just, hopefully this is a pretty free-flowing discussion, and as the facilitator, I'll make sure I'm capturing anything that may not have been written down. So with that, let me just quickly check again. So evaluating areas with aging septic systems and developing management and mitigation efforts. I'm going to put that in as our recommendation number 1 up here. Evaluating, oops. aging septic systems. So would anything jumping out to anyone as a key goal? The recommendation itself is pretty much a key goal, but we'll start with opening it up to the group. Key goals and key actions that would help us evaluate aging septic systems in the township. This is also where some of the goals may come in handy from the previous 2009 plan and whether or not they still remain relevant. I know there's always been previous talk in this group about considering our options for sewer treatment and in the Jordan Valley specifically. So I don't know if anyone has additional thoughts there that builds off of previous week that we can maybe turn into a more pointed goal or action.
Isn't the goal here to get ahead of environmental concerns? You know, if we've identified an area of the township that has these aging septic systems, the goal is to mitigate those, possibly build out our infrastructure so that we don't have environmental impacts for when these things fail.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think that's a great one, and that's a good reflection of a couple things that have come up previously. Any more key goals or key actions in terms of how we could accomplish that? I know we've discussed a bunch already. If anyone want to throw any out there?
I have one. I wrote it down, but I'm not sure what happened to it. Take a survey of septic system users to find out where problems are.
That's a great one.
Would we know if there are problems? I'm thinking we've been in this house since 2008 and we haven't had any, knock on wood, septic problems. How would I know? Like if, unless I have one, like if you ask me right now, hey, how's your septic system looking? I'd say, probably okay. So I'm curious if there's any other way for us to get at it from a different standpoint. For example, if we look at permitting, right? Don't septic systems in the township need to be permitted and inspected upon when a property turns over? Isn't that part of the sale?
As far as I know, no.
Okay.
No, we issue permits with the construction of a new septic system. And unless there are issues with it that the homeowner brings to our attention, basically the assumption is the system is working fine unless we hear otherwise.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think correct, Greg. The only way I think it is inspected is if the purchaser would want it done on contingency of selling the house.
Right, and that's what we did when we purchased our house. It was a contingency, perk test, and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, the homeowners or the purchaser do require it before it does get sold, because you're looking at a huge expense if it would fail and you just move in with it.
Right, but the township wouldn't have insight into that information, right?
No.
So going back to the survey, I guess you could still survey people and say, how many times have you had your system serviced in X amount of time. And when I say serviced, that's not just regular pumping, but actual, remediation of a problem.
Right. There could also be places where the septic system backs up, or you get flooding because the use exceeds the perk capacity of the soil.
How would we be able to know that?
You'll get water standing where your drain field is. My parents' house, which is not in South Whitehall, had that many years ago, and you could tell there was a problem. The drain field area would get standing water in it.
Right.
For example.
But I'm thinking from a planning standpoint, how many people are going to say, "Oh, sure, there's standing water in my backyard and in my septic field"?
Well, they may be interested in a sewer system if they're having that problem.
True.
Yeah. I find that most people, well, anecdotally speaking, of course, if no one's reporting it, we don't know, but basically, we generally don't see a lot of those issues. We occasionally do, either by the resident who reports it themselves, or by occasionally a neighbor will report that. Obviously, yeah, it's easy to detect if your septic system no longer functions because you have the standing water and there is a decided smell to it. So,
yeah, I think the age of the system that he's typing right now might be a better indicator if people actually know the age of their system.
It's often going to be the age of the house.
Sure.
And if it's properly maintained, you may get a very different answer than if it's never been pumped. So the maintenance schedule, and the township does have a requirement for how often it's pumped, I believe.
Just quickly here, I forgot to mention we're actually starting on page 2 of this Jamboard. I think some of you had posted comments and felt like they were lost. You would have to go to the top and click next frame. This was just a page in the workbook where you can write in some of your prioritizations, but we use that on Mentimeter, so that just doesn't really apply. So I should have mentioned that earlier, that we're starting on page 2. So hopefully some of your post-its won't disappear now.
Is there any possible way for the township to use its GIS system and maybe plot septic systems by age, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, that kind of thing?
absolutely.
That might give us a real good clue as to where to look for trouble, or at least old age.
Yeah, we have a file of all of our septic permits that we have. So basically, it's simply gleaning the information off of that and plotting that within the GIS. So we can not only gain age, but a whole slew of other data that comes with each septic permit.
Yeah, I say age because that's the simplest thing perhaps to get, but if there are other parameters that are readily available, that too.
Yeah.
Great. How about any potential stakeholders? Obviously, who would be leading some of these efforts? I think we could obviously throw the township in there, the GIS department. Greg, do you have a designated GIS specialist in the township, or how do those efforts go?
We have a few of them. I mean, Dave Mantart's pretty good. Lynette
Right.
Roman's pretty good, and I guess there might be one or two in Public Works as well.
Yeah, Greg, down here in Public Works, we don't actually input anything. We're just really good at using it and finding what we need.
And it's certainly something that could be a nice job for an intern over the summer, something along those lines.
I was going to jump in and say a person can do it right here.
How about any other potential partners or leaders that would maybe come from outside of the township? Are there any other dominant septic companies that could maybe help in some of the information we could maybe find on that they find through servicing that the township maybe has a relationship with, or anything else that would come from outside as township staff?
Yeah, we use Keystone Engineering for our septic.
How about funding for some sewer system, either expansions, improvements? Anyone familiar with potential avenues for the township in that sense?
Herb, I'm not aware of any grant programs for this particular type of work. I don't know if you would be.
No, I'm not familiar with any right now. There are going to be a lot of grants coming out. I know there's some for water side right now. I don't know of any on the sewer side right now.
Greg, I think a driver of this could be, developer as well. Developing on the opposite side of the ridge, could force some developer to take a look at how to move sewer over Huckleberry.
Yeah, the reason we're gridlocked right now on sanitary is we don't have any pumping stations. So the system is all gravity. So we can't get over the ridge of Huckleberry without putting pumping stations north.
Yeah. And that would probably be something that goes with the Act 537 plan.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll talk about those with our next goal. Before we jump there, I feel like I'm getting the sense this would be more of a near-term goal. Anyone have thoughts on implementation, whether or not within this comp plan, this should be one of the plan's more immediate focuses, or should it be more midterm? Midterm would be in the, I would say, 2 to 5 year range. Long term would be 5+ years, 5 to 10. Near term would be 1 to 2 within the MPC required 10-year planning period.
Has the township had any problems, areas that have been reported?
I don't know of any areas, to be honest. Herb, Mike?
No, Bill, I haven't gotten any word that we're having systems fail. So if we do get complaints, that's when Keystone goes out and does their inspections. And I haven't heard of any draft areas that are failing.
Yeah, I hear of one, maybe a failure or a failing system once every 2 or 3 years. The latest one I've heard of is up on Village Road. It's not something we get a lot of.
Well, based on that feedback, it sounds like maybe we might consider mid to long term implementation.
Yeah. Another source of information might be the septic tank pumping companies. They may have information because they're the ones that do the pumping and do the repairs.
Mm.
Yeah, I know it's pretty standard, Bill, that when they do pump them out, that they do a full inspection of them all.
Because I just had some weirs and things replaced on mine this year.
Yeah, normally they check for roots, if the baffles are working correctly, to make sure everything is breaking down the way it's supposed to inside.
Speaking back towards the environmental impacts in avoiding septic failures, I think that was Scott that touched on that. Do you know if maybe there's any environmental grants that would go towards septic mitigation and making sure municipalities get the funding they need to protect against those types of things?
I would have no idea. It's not really in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. I think there maybe would be something along those lines, but I wouldn't be sure. But just be on the lookout for any grants.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to get any grants for septic systems because they're privately owned. We don't, own them, so I don't think they're going to give the township a grant. The only grant becoming available is if you want to put sewer through and then get them off a septic. That's the only way I could see there being a grant ever put out there for it.
Yeah, certainly, for like an intern to do this sort of GIS work, that's fairly inexpensive. It's probably something the township can, easily budget for. Once we have that, then we can fairly easily send out surveys and the like to all septic system owners to collect information from that. That on the grand scale of things, that's fairly inexpensive as well. So fortunately, collecting the data will probably be fairly cheap from our point of view.
Okay, well, that's good. How about, this might be kind of broad, but measures of success? How would we maybe look at, say, come 2031, when you guys are updating your plan again? Is there anything you would look to say that this goal or this recommendation was successfully achieved, or when we look at this again in 10 years, this is what we should evaluate as to whether or not this recommendation was a success? It could just be the number of systems that are updated, or is it success if we do have a working inventory in GIS that we have a layer that is constantly updated. I think that can be a natural measure of success. Anyone else have anything?
It would seem to me that, we're kind of focusing on a lot of existing residences in the township with the on-site sewage systems. I would think that our ultimate goal should really be to get some sort of sewer system more widely spread than we have, to take care of potential problems from this stuff, and also to encourage future growth. I guess I keep thinking, if you build it, they shall come. So, but
that could also be a reason not to.
Building it gets real expensive, and you need to pick where you're going to build it carefully. So go back maybe to where we encourage growth at the township. And
I guess that could go both ways, though.
Right.
Yes.
It has to be a fine line of where the development versus where you don't want development. So
that's right.
Everywhere and get every customer, because then you're opening up a floodgate.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we have to watch what we put out there, because we only have so much allocation left at this time. So if we run rampant and put sewer lines everywhere north, we're not gonna have enough allocation to even use those sewer lines. So you'd have to come up with a
I
model
agree.
to
I agree.
where we
That's
can
all.
get the
That's
most.
all part of
bang for our
planning
buck.
carefully.
Yep,
Hmm.
correct.
Okay.
Right. I think one of the goals we're going to get to here, number 4, would be to make sure we are evaluating proper growth areas, along with the update of the land use plan that could help inform some of those decisions as to where sewer expansion may come. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add here to septic system mitigation and evaluation before we jump to recommendation 2, which is pretty similar, updating Act 537 and 167 plans? Anything else?
I just had one comment, just I think there needs to be an appreciation of the balance between the need to upgrade the existing aging septics and new growth of sewer. As Herb mentioned, we've got allocation limitations. So I believe there's a tension there between upgrading the ones that are failing in tandem with looking at future growth, because we may be limited on how much we can do. So I don't know how to phrase that differently, but I think we need to be sensitive and leave room for needing to upgrade those that are potentially aging to the point of failure and being an environmental issue.
Yep. Agreed.
And Diane, to your point, just doing a little research, as far as grants go, I saw you were talking about existing septic, Pennsylvania infrastructure, the Penvest. There's a community septic management program. The agency, Environmental Protection, offers low interest loans to homeowners to repair or replace their individual on-lot sewage disposal systems. So there's stuff out there for homeowners, it seems, which, to your point of fixing what's broken, that we can make new again instead of adding more to take away from allocation.
Mike, that would be to convert them to septic, to sewer, or to upgrade their current septic to a more.
I'm reading it as repair or replace their on-lot septic system.
Okay. Thank you.
And to continue on that, that would probably be something that we could do a better job at educating the public for. Certainly put them onto that kind of program. Maybe just mention it in a newsletter that if you have a septic system, these programs are available to you. Make it more palatable for property owners who have failing systems or think they have failing systems to take care of that work themselves before it becomes an issue.
Great. Well, we have plenty there for septic systems. I want to make sure we have proper time for some of the rest of our recommendations. So we'll go on to our second, which is updating or developing Act 537 and Act 167 plans. So Act 537 is for sewer facilities, and Act 167 is stormwater management plans.
Can I ask a question on the sewer facilities? We talk about how close we are to our limit. What is our limit and how close are we to it?
Bill, give me 1 second to grab my folder. I have a rough number of what we have left. Give me 1 minute.
Okay. I guess okay. That would be a part of the 537. study?
Yes, I would think so.
Hi, Chris. Have we moved on to sheet 3?
Yes, we did. Sorry, I should have stated that more clearly. We're on slide 3 out of 8 right now.
Back to your question, we have about 300,000 to 400,000 left.
Okay.
How many houses does that equate to, or how many dwellings? Do you know, roughly?
I don't have that. I can figure it out and let you know in a little bit, Diane.
Okay, just to get an idea of how limited or broad we are.
No problem.
Thank
Herbie, would that go off of the 223 number?
Yeah, that's what I was putting in right now. I was just,
I think it's like 1,700 houses or something like that. But
Thank
there's right now there's a regional 537 being put together from all the signatories that dump into the Kleins Island treatment plant. They're asking for the top amount that the plant can process. They want that number to be raised. Evidently, the plant can process more than it's permitted for. So the signatories are all getting together, and they're basically writing an interim plan that goes to DEP for their oversight, their approval.
Mike, do you have any idea on the time frame for that?
It's lengthy. We've been engaging in meetings now for the past, Herb, help me out, probably year and a half. If I'm trying to year and a half or so. I think the submission was made. I believe we're waiting to hear back. Or it was either made or they're putting some final touches on it. I know they've been in contact with Scott Confer from DEP, trying to nail down some stuff. But yeah, it's probably out another. The way things are going right now, I would say probably a year.
A year before they take a vote whether or not they're going to increase capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that I'm wrong, to be quite honest with you. I hope it's much shorter than that. But our sewer planning modules that we send into DEP, 5 years ago they took maybe a month to a few weeks maybe to get back, and now we're 6-8 months out, in some cases longer. So just under promise, over deliver. That's all. That's all I'm doing.
Thank you.
I'm reviewing some of the recommendations that were previously in the 2009 plan, and recommendation number 4 for utilities does say conduct an Act 537 feasibility study to determine the most feasible option for expanding sewer service. Anyone know if that happened? Was there a feasibility study, or if not, would that be an action or a recommendation that we would want to carry over to the 2021 plan?
Doesn't jump to mind in my head. Mike and Herb, maybe what we've been discussing the past few years is actually that feasibility study.
Yeah, I don't know of any. I think the updates to the 537 plan that we have were, and Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm still learning this as we go here, but the updates that we have, was that for when sewer was expanded to undeveloped areas, Is that the updates we have to that original 537 plan? Is that how that worked?
As I understand it, yes, the 19, I think it was 1990, or was it 99 update? That was to put public water and sewer out west of the turnpike in the area that is now Vistas at Green Hills and Blue Barn Meadows in that area. So that was the last update that I'm aware of. Now I know Spots was talking about trying to figure out if we wanted to expand the sewer capacity more, and I think they actually put some work into doing that, but then the comp plan update came up, and I think the decision was that we wait for the comp plan. So the comp plan is not, behind the times if the 537 plan decides to put sewer in the Jordan Valley. So they wanted the comp plan to be the lead, not the follow.
You're correct, Greg. They wanted to do the comp plan for the 537 plan.
Yeah.
So how about going on with these plans, stakeholders that could help, achieve some of these actions? Obviously, I think one that has to be DEP. Anyone have any other ideas for stakeholders or funding sources that would go along with maybe, further understanding systems capabilities, examining feasibility of expansion? So stakeholders and funding sources.
Would be the sewer authority. It's not Allentown now. It's the was it the
Lehigh County.
Lehigh County?
Lehigh County Authority.
CA.
Yeah, they're more of. I mean, that's really the big driver here. Is there going to be allocation available? I mean, if there's no allocation, there's no building really, because sewer got to go somewhere. So I think that's a huge huge issue.
And of course, as always, if the township wants to be very careful about its development, there's nothing that states that we need to use all of our allocation if suddenly the sewer plant has, 30% more allocation available. Correct me if I'm wrong, Herb or Mike, but we would get a slice of that, but it's up to us to decide where development goes and how quickly we use it.
That's correct. If they do have extra, obviously it's gonna have to be purchased. They're not gonna just, I don't believe that they're just gonna hand it out to everyone. But you are correct. You can purchase what you want and hold it for as long as you want. And then if the municipalities buy some, but they run out, you can always sell it to other municipalities also.
Herbie,
Yeah.
this is a question. Am I understanding it correctly where if there's 1 million gallons of extra capacity, but Upper Macungie gets another brewery that's going to use 500,000 gallons, I mean, it comes off the total for all the other signatories. That's correct, right?
Yeah, that's what they have us do on the projected flows, Mike. You are correct. So once they do re-rate the plant, they're looking at the future flows to see what everyone might need to accommodate it.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. And just so everyone understands what Herb's saying is we're trying to do our projected flows out to 2050, which is not an easy task. Yeah. So that's something we're currently talking about. So that's what Herb was saying.
I just quickly added that to actions. I think that'd be a great one to just explore that further with adjacent municipalities. If there's anyone has any more stakeholders or funding sources to add, if not, maybe we can move to implementation timeline.
Would another stakeholder be the developers?
Yeah, I believe so.
They could. You probably won't get much in the way of takers unless they're proposing a development that's capable of connecting to the existing system.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? You could have somebody very wealthy come in and decide they want to run sewer up into the Jordan Valley, and they're willing to pay for it.
So
You could.
But
this is not the only issue. I mean, transportation's, of course, seems to be the most prominent issue with any development, but this is
right.
a parallel.
yeah, and of course, due to DEP requirements that if you're not on public water and sewer, you need at least an acre of lot for a single family house. That's the key. Because if you don't have the public water and sewer, you're not going to see the density of development that you would if you did have public water and or sewer.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've discussed, there's advantages both ways. Depending if you want development or if you want to, keep traffic off the road.
Right. So would this be a more near-term goal? This could maybe go along also in terms of being longer term with our first recommendation by first determining, what the system's capabilities are, where there's room for smart expansion. So would it be similar to our first one and be a more mid to long term goal? Does anyone think it would be near term for these plans?
I think it goes with where do we want to grow.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think it's more a midterm, 2 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we would have to budget for it, and then, of course, studies would have to be, made to determine where the comprehensive plan directs growth and how best to serve that with water and sewer if it's practical.
And how about any specific measures of success for evaluation of this goal before we move on to the next? Some of these kind of evaluate themselves with our goals and actions, or our goals and actions are evaluations in themselves. So, maybe we don't need to flesh those out anymore, but anyone have thoughts of how we can measure this recommendation? Next, we'll be discussing the benefits of a capital improvements plan. So if you don't have any measures, start throwing something out for capital improvements and we'll go there.
I do have one. It would be, do we have the capacity for our projected optimum growth, or however you want to? I'm not saying that for higher growth or lower growth, is whatever the township or all of us feels is the appropriate growth.
Right, and obviously that, like we've been saying, will go hand in hand with some of the recommendations and future land use determinations that the comp plan makes. So the comp plan does kind of have to come first before we can determine some of these things. So I think like Greg said, the midterm timeline makes a lot of sense here. So,
I would
All right.
certainly think a measure of success might be, I hate to say the feasibility study, but some sort of decision as to whether we do need to pursue an update for the 537 plan. And then if we do, obviously the measure of success is approving the 537 plan.
I know some of the questions out there are, with this Regional Act 537 plan, will you be able to use that as your Act 537 plan? Because they are already coming in and basically doing one in your whole township.
That's Herbie, you're right, and I have still waiting on a call back from DEP on that exact question. I left a message, or I'm sorry, email about a week and a half ago with Scott and just asked that exact question. Hey, all this work's being done and these townships are spending the time and getting this information in. Do we have to do it twice? So I'm still kind of waiting to hear back because I have a feeling they don't really know the answer either.
Mhm. Okay, so we'll move on here to slide 4, which, going along with our prioritization, is exploring the benefits of capital improvements plan. I know this came up in, I think, both meetings that we've had so far on community utilities. I think Herb touched on a bit in terms of what is currently existing for capital improvements plan. Maybe that would be a good way to start. Herb?
Yeah, as I said before, we do have a CapEx plan for sewer and for water. It gives us projected projects out. I think we are phased out to 2025 or 2026. We will be working with our engineer to get it out to 27 and 28 possibly. So we know of upcoming projects that we have to start the budget for and get ready for any issues that we see coming in the future.
Yeah, you said it was, sorry, for sewer and stormwater, you said?
No, we have it for our sewer system and our water operations.
Okay.
Stormwater, we have to follow our MS4 permit, what we submit.
Do highways go or roadways go into a capital improvement plan?
Yes, capital, roadway paving usually does come out of our capital budget. You could get at a state highway aid also to pay for the roads to be repaired. I am working right now with Manhart. We're putting out a GIS map of every street that we need to either just overlay, mill and overlay, one that just needs crack seal, one that needs to be fully reconstructed. We have that map almost completed, and then we are going to actually put together whether it would be a 7-year to a 10-year plan to try to get all the roads fixed and repaired correctly.
Now, would a part of that be, and which sewers, whether they're sanitary, stormwater, or also water lines, need to be upgraded or repaired or renewed before? So you do that before you repave?
Well, what we do is we know if we need the sewer or the water lines replaced in that area. We're not going to pave that for probably a year to 2 years after. That way it would give time for any settling to happen occur in any trenches or anything like that. Yeah, we are working that hand in hand with water and sewer. And we also work with UGI also. They give us a 5-year plan of where they're looking to install gas and everything. So we work with them. So we're not putting a brand new road in. They come in, dig a trench, and now we got a road with patch in it already. The other thing, when we put the road paving together is development. okay, you're gonna build here, is there a possibility of that we can get a new road from the developer instead of the township having to pay for it?
Okay. A lot of moving parts.
Yes.
Slightly changing subjects. I know we had previously touched on potential expansions of some broadband systems in the township, whether that be high-speed internet, cable. Would any larger scale improvements for 5G towers or anything like that, would that fall under a capital benefit or capital improvements plan, or no?
Wouldn't that all be done by private
Right.
entities?
Okay. I think we're going to be touching on that soon. Yeah, that's our sixth one if we have time to get there. So I'll put that in there just to make sure, in case we don't have time to touch on it later. I'll capture it now. Any other goals or actions related to exploring increased benefits of the capital improvements plan? Or we could jump to more stakeholders, funding sources, to maybe expand some of the township plans beyond just the sewer systems or water operations. Maybe just to continue encouraging to expand the plan yearly. Like Herb said, they're looking to expand to additional years. So, I mean, sometimes comp plan goals are pretty basic like that, to just continue to utilize the capital improvements plan. I think would be a great recommendation. I believe, yes, goal number 9 for municipal infrastructure and services in the 2009 plan does say create and annually review a 5-year capital improvements plan that prioritizes capital projects and informs the yearly budget and work program prior to the budget each year. So the previous plan recommends a 5-year capital improvements plan, and for it to be annually reviewed. So I think maybe you could comment on whether or not that should be carried over to the 2021 plan. And for funding, there would be state funds from PennDOT for any improvements that would come along with the roadways. Anything else of note for funding sources in the capital improvements plan? I'll put them as a partner as well.
Yeah, and there's also grants out there, not for the roads, but for water and sewer. So we are currently looking into some
Right.
grants to help us out with that. The other thing we're currently looking at too would be equipment grants, because obviously to keep redoing the roads and everything, we need equipment. A lot of this equipment is very expensive, so we're looking to some equipment grants to try to offset some of this also.
Put that in as a action as well. Explore equipment capabilities. I want to make sure we get to some of our other recommendations as well. Does anyone have any quick thoughts on implementation timeline or measures of success before we move on? Would this be near term, midterm, long term?
I would say near term, that we should have a plan, and I mean, it could be made better. You know, I think that should be a continuing item.
I think the annual reviews could provide their own measures of success as well. So I think that's a natural measure there. I'll toss that in there. If anyone has anything else?
And one other funding source, are developers a funding source?
I have them in here as a partner.
Okay.
But also put them as just the developers.
I was going to say this is a double-edged sword, but certainly when you develop GIS layers, you can certainly make that easier for the public to view what our capital improvements plans are. So that could increase understanding amongst the township residents. You know, it might be nice to see your street's going to get a paving in 3 years, or something like that.
You're reading my mind, Greg, because that's what I would like to do. Put that map out there for the road. Also, put a layer up there if they want to see what our water main and valve replacement jobs are going to look like. Same thing with sewer replacement. Just put it all there so everyone can see exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, to understand that you guys do a lot.
Yeah, you can say that.
Of course, you will have problems when somebody sees that the repaving of their street has now been deferred a year or two for budget reasons.
Yes.
You are very correct, Al. I get a lot of those calls.
So this is one that's come up already. I think I, just based on conversation, could fill in a lot of this. So it would be evaluating growth areas to ensure adherence to the future land use plan that'll be developed as a part of this comp plan update. I know we only have about 20 minutes left, and since we've touched on a couple of these, do you guys find it valuable to spend some time on 4 and 5 here? Growth areas and ensuring development follows utility capacity, or do you think we've somewhat covered that? Do you think it'd be beneficial to jump to a slight change of topic like high speed or 5G? Kind of throw it out there to see what everyone thinks. Maybe we could briefly drill down into some of the funding sources or leaders to help determine how we would go about evaluating the growth areas. I know obviously that comes later after this process in the development of the future land use map and the new determinations. Any general thoughts from the group? I'm just conscious of our time.
It seems like it's you can take that as it's similar to what we've already just talked about.
Right.
And I think you could take it from that.
Yeah. A lot of this is going to be synthesized as well. I know a lot of conversation here, and just from reviewing the recordings and everything, I'll be able to run through this and put in anything that I think was missed or that I didn't type quick enough. We'll also have the same Google form online to type in anything that I may have been forgotten. Greg, you got to say something?
I was going to say these two sound like near-term goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this would be near term. That's a great point. Just put in quickly evaluate 2009 growth areas.
Was it reevaluate or evaluate?
Right. Reevaluate.
Yeah.
I'll quickly put in near term for the next one as well, which was ensure development follows capability. Pretty much the same. Reevaluate growth areas. All right. So unless anyone has any further thoughts on how we could input some goals or actions to follow the new land use plan and to ensure we're following our capabilities. I know we've beaten that into the ground, and that's a great point, and it will definitely follow through. It's definitely a part of some of the previous goals here as I look at everything. I want to make sure we do touch on the broadband goal.
Can
Yeah,
I just one more question, if we're going to touch on it or not, is, and we have talked about it in some terms. I just want to see if you have, if you're done with it, is the evaluation of sewer on the north side of Huckleberry Ridge. Do we?
Yeah, I know Mike has touched on, needing pump stations due to the ridge. I'll make sure that gets mentioned in all these places.
Okay. I'm not saying whether it should or shouldn't. It's just I know that was a big goal 10 years ago, or big issue.
Right, and whether or not that would be considered a growth area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we'll get to inventory where high-speed internet or 5G is available and explore opportunities to increase access. Key goals or actions that could help us accomplish that. Is there any sort of existing inventory now that the township is aware of? I believe that there is not. I know that there's probably a general awareness of areas where their service doesn't exist, but are you aware of anything, Greg, of an existing inventory? No.
I am not a 5G, no. I think it's being slowly brought into the township, but for that, we would have to go with the service providers.
I believe that there is one 5G transmitter receiver unit over by the Red Robin restaurant.
Mm.
That's been there probably, within a stone's throw of the electric car charging arena. So, and I believe that's been there probably about a year and a half now. But that's, to my knowledge, that's the only thing in the township right now.
Okay.
I saw in the news, the other concern is, are there any, from a legal standpoint, is there anything that the township has to do to allow, from a permitting standpoint, this type of utility? Since it is different than traditional cell towers.
Yeah, and we've been talking with our legal team on that. You're right, it is different. For the most part, we're down to simply, electrical permit is all it is. Now, our cell tower ordinance has been updated to account for these. In fact, it was updated years ago to account for these things. So the problem is that, like I said, we're not getting too many permits for this sort of work now. We're anticipating seeing more as they ramp up. But yeah, we're now seeing this stuff appear on utility poles just in the right of way.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to examine state and federal law to see if there's any incentives that we as a township can offer to have these things brought in places that we want them.
Free polls.
I would say we want them everywhere.
Basically.
My measure of success would be when I see 5G on my iPhone. Because right now, I'm in Baltimore right now, and I see it there. When I went to New York, I see 5G come up on my phone there. I never see it when I'm home.
You have to be careful about that because I have an iPhone 8 that does not have 5G capabilities, yet when I go down to Montgomery County, it says 5G LTE. It's a marketing ploy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
5G if you have AT&T, because I know exactly what you're talking about. I have a 11 Pro and it says 5GE, but that's just AT&T's fake version of 5G. It's not true 5G.
right, it's 4G on steroids.
Correct.
Okay. I'm AT&T. I'm probably getting hoodwinked.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm on Verizon and I don't see any of that stuff yet.
And how about timeline for some of these broadband goals? Would this be more long-term, or do you think there's an immediate need to sort of bump up the county's capabilities to match modern technology, or
I certainly think there's a need in the short term. With so many people working from home, with so many people essentially cutting the cord with the cable, more options are better. Because what's going to happen is if we don't foster this in the township, people are just going to go to satellite internet, which, there's a new one on the horizon, pardon the pun, about $100 a month, and it's faster than most terrestrial-based cable services that you can get today. So I look in the paper and I see, RCN is offering 300 megabit service, and I think the highest that you can get from Service Electric is a third of that, 100 megabit, and you're paying out the nose for it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, we focused on 5G, but there's a whole other component, and that is, broadband through either cable internet or through fiber optic.
Yeah, and short of actually becoming an internet provider ourselves as the township, we can try to develop incentives, but this is generally based around the providers and how much density they can serve. And that's the real reason why they go out and expand their service. And I mean, even in the areas of West End, Allentown, you're probably not going to see a robust growth of service there simply because the density doesn't allow the internet provider to see a return on investment. So
Right.
I hate to say it, but north of the hate to say it, Bill, but north of the Huckleberry Ridge, you're probably not going to see 5G for a while.
So I have to get my satellite working, huh?
You might have to. I mean, I would love to look at the have a better look at the state and federal laws to see if there is something that we as a township can offer. But I'm not really confident that we can offer enough incentives.
And as a public, like, I know that there are some municipalities that have looked into government-sponsored broadband, and I believe that it was recently outlawed. That if a municipality has it, they can keep it, but I think there was a lot of lobbying involved, and the tech firms don't want municipalities competing. I don't know if you remember the failed attempt for Philadelphia maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago at this point. They wanted to offer Wi-Fi from light posts, and it went over like a lead balloon. I think Comcast kind of put an end to that pretty quickly.
Yeah, Scott, I think Comcast sued them and won. I think they actually had parts of the city were up and running.
Yes.
If I remember right, and they had to shut the system down because Comcast said, I think, were they including it in their taxes? Is that how it went? Like you were already paying taxes, so we're going to give you free internet, something to that effect?
I'm not sure how they were funding it. I don't know if it's a public-private partnership or if it was totally out of taxes. I'd have to look back. But I don't think broadband is something South Whitehall Township, even if we could, should be getting into.
Mm.
Just because you mentioned the scale, and I don't think you could get the economies of scale. We're pretty well served, and I mean that's with an asterisk. If there were nothing, I would say, yeah, let's think about it. But since we do have stuff, let the professionals do it, and maybe encourage them to do it if we can.
Well, if they don't get over the ridge, I'm going to be probably applying for a permit on my septic tank drain field to put a rocket launcher in to put satellites up.
I think seriously, what we kind of need to do is keep our zoning and land development ordinances such that it's reasonably favorable and legal for the carriers to provide this service. And that probably means complying with the state sample ordinance.
Yep.
If our existing ones don't.
I believe we're okay at this point.
Good.
Any other quick thoughts on internet expansion, broadband, before we maybe spend 2 to 3 minutes maybe on some green infrastructure, alternative energy, and then before we close, I need to review some items before our next meeting. So, any other quick thoughts on broadband? Hearing none,
Ran out.
we're out. I'll go to the first one here, and if anyone has any key goals or actions for green infrastructure, I'll make sure to put a note in here. This is for green infrastructure. or alternative energy? Or how about this? Does the group think that these shouldn't be recommendations in the community utilities section? I mean, they are, last place in our prioritization. Are there reasons for that? Do you think they apply maybe to resource protection more so than community utilities? Just any quick thoughts before we move? Yep.
Are we
Sorry.
considering trash collection a utility? I think that was a shrug, Greg.
Why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I bring this up is the diversion of organic material from the waste stream is in everybody's best interest. And as a township, it's not that much for us to do to promote people composting, on their lot if they have the ability. Where I lived prior to this in Whitemarsh, Montgomery County, the township even went so far as to provide compost bins to each household. And I actually have mine. It moved with me up here in South Whitehall. And, kitchen scraps are in there, and, it diverts it from the waste stream, therefore keeping stuff out of landfills.
That does remind me that the final utility goal for the previous plan, all it says is consider developing a landfill policy. So maybe that would apply here in making sure some of these stuff doesn't get into our waste streams. I'm assuming that goal wasn't realized since 2009. But
I'm not even sure what exactly that means.
yeah, I don't know what that means either.
On this one, what I would recommend is, reviewing the current ordinances, particularly any code enforcement issues, so that we're not encouraging something that will then generate code enforcement against. So if we're going to encourage this sort of thing, we have to review our codes to ensure that we are encouraging it across the board, and not having codes that are contradictory to it.
Mm-hmm. Good point. I think that also would apply to alternative energy. Are we encouraging, discouraging, or neutral to somebody putting up a windmill or a small solar farm or something else on property?
Well, we do allow that sort of thing. Once again, it would be good to look at it, because when we developed that ordinance probably 10 years or so ago, our view of these things was different from what it is now. So a review of the current ordinances for that sort of thing would be good. Make sure we're up to date on what exactly the community's vision for that is.
Right. All right. Well, I'm glad we touched on this a little bit. I know they're lower on the list. Originally, I thought we wouldn't even make it here. Yeah. Sounds like Chris. Anyone else on green infrastructure, alternative energy?
I think those are good ideas to encourage.
Great. Well, like I said, I know we kind of had a pretty wide-ranging topic. I'll make sure in the materials we pass along and review, I'll add in some thoughts from other places that help populate the growth area goals and development capabilities. So I want to make sure that those don't get missed. Before we go, I'd like to just briefly touch on our next meeting. Let me scroll down to our concluding meeting for the working group process here in phase 4 will come on August 19th. And that'll be during the Planning Commission, which will be at 7 p.m. And again, what will take place is each working group topic will have its highest priority recommendations presented to the Planning Commission members. And they will take those suggestions into consideration as they formally go into the update process. So that'll be our chance as a working group to make sure we fully capture some of our highest priority thoughts. We'll have more information on this in terms of how much time each group will have and how many recommendations we're able to touch on. So before we go, in summary, is there anyone that has any interest in being a spokesperson or presenter for this group, community utilities? This would be at the Planning Commission meeting in person, August 19th, 7 p.m. So I don't know if your schedules are finalized. This is something that, maybe if you're interested, you could email me. Someone doesn't need to do it if it doesn't work out for anyone. Just as the group facilitator, I can certainly be the person that presents these things. I think for some groups, we're not going to have attendance. This is just one of our more popular and engaged groups in terms of weekly attendance. So if anyone would like to, either let me know now or send me an email over the next week. Like I said, the conclusion meeting isn't until August 19th, so you have some time to finalize your schedule, think about whether or not it's something you'd want to do. If not, no worries at all. I'll be sure I'm well versed in everything we discussed, and I'll refer to our prioritizations to make sure I can whittle down everything I need to present. Any quick volunteers now that I should remain in contact with? If not, let me know. So with that is the end of all of our working groups as the Community Utilities Working Group. Like I said, we'll follow up with materials following this meeting, which will include a link to the Community Utilities webpage, which again, if you have more thoughts that you'd like to share on everything we discussed today, similar to all the previous working group meetings, all you need to do is click on working group meeting 3, and that'll take you to a form of the recommendation templates. And if there's anything you think you missed or you forgot to mention, you can put in your input that way. We'll be sure to share the meeting recording, the Jamboards, and the prioritizations as we move forward. So with that, I'd like to wish everyone a good night. And of course, we thank everyone for all their attendance and all their great input. We really got, I think, some pretty detailed recommendations that will be presented and considered by the Planning Commission, which was our desired goal. And I think this group did a great job of achieving that goal. So thanks again. Any final thoughts, Greg, or anyone else?
Oh, just thank you all for coming out and helping your community plan for its future.
Thank you for facilitating, Chris.
Yep, of course.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Have a
Thanks.
good evening, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
too.
Thanks
Take
again.
care.
Night.
Thank you, Chris.
Of course, no problem.